Hi everybody, Adam here. Welcome back to our Lego room. In today's video, we're taking a look at our Brick Tracks North Pole Railroad locomotive and train cars. Really big fan of this train. All of the train cars that we've been collecting for it have been a lot of fun and great additions to the train. And the locomotive is awesome as well. They are coming out with a couple of additional cars for the train again this year, which should be a lot of fun. We'll talk more about those in a few minutes, but the goal of today's video, we're going to try to put the train through its paces here on the tabletop layout, and then if everything works well, we will try to run it down on the Winter Village loop that we have added to our lower level layout. Really excited to have this train down there running on a more regular basis, but curious to see what issues we might find as we put it through its paces today. This is another example of a train that we haven't been running as regularly as I would like, and I think it'll be really cool to have a more permanent home for it down around the Winter Village. But in general, just looking forward to having this train out on the tracks more regularly so we can run it in conjunction with our other Lego trains. So first off, let's take a quick tour down all the different cars that we have for the North Pole Railroad train. You can see here we've got the locomotive. This is using power functions to motorize and pull the train. It's got its tender car. Then we have a couple of tank cars. We've got the hot chocolate car and the eggnog car. Now they are releasing two more tank cars this year. It's the peppermint mocha and caramel tank cars, which should be fun and interesting additions and a cool extension of the tank cars that we already have here. And then we've got the North Pole Railroad caboose. Really love the look of this caboose. Really awesome coloring. And love the decal work, and I believe some of these are printed tiles in here too, but all the decal work, all the text, logos, etc., really cool to see on these train cars. Adds a lot. Now, beyond these initial cars here, we've also got the stock car back here that can hold the reindeer. As I recall, I need to do some work on the wheels for this particular train car to make it a little more free-flowing when the train is pulling it along. It catches a bit, I think, on some of the tracks going around, so we will work on that a bit. But an awesome car. Love how we've got the reindeer names here under each of the openings and the Great North Pole Railroad tile there. So awesome stock car, and definitely something that I would like to build an additional copy of to house more reindeer on the train when we get that particular part working a little bit more reliably. Then back here, we've got the awesome Christmas tree car, hauling all the different Christmas trees around. Really fun, cool idea. We've got the flat car with Santa's sleigh. And then the two latest additions, we've got the Naughty Children Coal Company train cars. This is from last year. Really awesome coal cars. We have not had these run with the rest of the train yet. So we're going to initially do some tests with just a smaller subset of the train cars. We've got the locomotive, the two tank cars, and the caboose. We'll see how that runs, make sure everything's performing the way that we want, and then we'll try to add a few additional cars in, and then if everything's looking okay, we will move things down to the lower level layout to see how it runs around the upcoming space for the winter village down there. So let's get started. Okay, so a couple of abortive attempts to get the North Pole Railroad locomotive running properly on the tabletop layout has, I think, confirmed for me what the issues were that I needed to fix for the train. One, the coupler came off, I believe, the last time I was running this train, and I need to look into the instructions to figure out the exact height and location of it on the locomotive there, so it connects back to the tender correctly and doesn't cause one or the other to derail when it's going around corners. So we'll get that straightened out. I think that should be fairly easy. In the short term, I think we can leverage the power functions cable that we have going between the locomotive and the tender there, which should keep things together and hopefully won't put too much strain on that power functions cable. So we're going to run the locomotive around here on the Winter Village lower level loop. This will be a fairly easy set of track for it to run on. And then we can work outwards from here, figure out how to test all the train cars and see how we want to run these in the short term. And then that'll give me a good list to work from for fixing some of these issues up so that we can give the locomotive a more robust test in the coming weeks here and start to get it running the way we expect. Other thing to note, I've got a second battery pack on here. The other battery pack, I believe, is running out of juice. So we'll go like this for now, and I will work on getting the other battery pack out of the tender and recharged. So if we fire this up, like I said, this is power functions that is motorizing the locomotive here. Seems to be running fairly smoothly. Definitely looks cool. It's going to be so awesome as we get all the buildings into the Winter Village layout here and then having this train running around. So that's running pretty well. That seems fairly smooth. Obviously, there's the coupler issue, and we'll get the battery pack situation squared away. But that is looking great, running the way I expect. It looks pretty smooth. Not really seeing any hiccups or issues as the wheels are going around. So I think the next test, let's add in a couple of train cars here and let's see how far we can push it on the lower level layout here, and then we'll do potentially some of those other tests I was talking about on the tabletop layout. Okay, so we have the two tank cars attached now. So if we start this up, should run pretty smoothly. Obviously, the coupling situation still needs to get sorted out there between the locomotive and the tender. That is running pretty well though. And honestly, I think I just need to come up with a better coupling situation between the locomotive and the tender. the method that, you get out of the box. It works, but it's a little fiddly with the piece that sort of goes in there to connect those two parts together. I think it would be a lot nicer if I could come up with just a way to connect a couple of magnets in there to hold those cars together at the appropriate, distance and angle that they're supposed to be. So I will look at that. I will dig out the instructions at first, see what would need to change to get this method of coupling them together to work again. But I think a magnetic approach, like I said, might be a little more robust, but that's working super well. Really nice to see those two train cars moving behind the locomotive. Next step, I think, is to add the caboose on down here and see if we can run successfully with that. Looking at this and kind of jogging my memory now about tests I was running with all the different, sort of ever expanding library of train cars for this particular railroad. I think one of the other big things that I'm going to need to look at is a secondary motor. I think the train could really benefit from having another car in the middle of the train and maybe even at the end of the train with motors in them to help push and pull all of the weight that is basically going to be spread out down the length of this train. It's going to be pretty intense, I think, for just the locomotive to try to pull everything along here. So that's something else I'm just going to file away for the time being, and will be something that I think we need to look at, but we can kind of confirm that as we add more cars in here and seeing how things run. Okay, so now we've got the locomotive, the two tank cars, and the caboose. Just want to make sure that this behaves the way we expect. Looks pretty cool. Happy with how those train cars look. Everything seems super smooth. And the train is, the locomotive is pulling everything fairly well. Obviously, I think it would be even better if that coupling situation was fixed up there, but it seems to be working out okay as a short-term sort of stopgap. So happy with that. Now let's try running a few of the other train cars up on the tabletop layout. Maybe we'll get the Maersk locomotive, I think, to pull a few of the others around the tabletop layout. And we can also try moving. Actually, you know what? Before I even do that, I'm going to bring the coal cars down because I'd like to see how the coal cars look behind the locomotive here. So now we have the addition of the two new coal cars from last year. Love the look of these two train cars. And I can already guess that we're going to be pushing the limits of what the locomotive can pull here. But a good test, and then we can see if need be, we can run this train with just the locomotive and the two coal cars as a test and see if that works the way we want. But, maybe I'll be surprised. Maybe everything will run, similarly and smoothly with these extra 2 cars in here, but let's fire it up and see. I mean, it's running, but it's struggling quite a bit more. Now, I obviously don't need to run the train with every single possible train car every time it's running. I can do different swaps and have it use subsets of the train cars. But, I think it's cool to see just how far we can push the envelope. And like I said, I think it could work fairly well if we manage to get another type of car that could run with the train motor and a battery pack, like say mid-train and maybe end of the train. A couple more cars there could probably, a couple more motors contributing to the overall train could help this do what it needs to do to run not only what you can see right here, but also then potentially adding in the additional, what is it? We've got 2 additional cars to what we've got right now. And then when the latest order comes in, we'll add another 2 cars. So yeah, there's still a number of cars that could theoretically run in here. So I think having at least 1, if not 2, additional motor locations throughout the train will, just help this run, in the extreme cases, much more smoothly and give us a higher sort of top end with where we can go with the size of this particular train. Okay, so I don't want to totally destroy the motor that's in the locomotive here, and I feel like, adding additional cars at this point not really going to prove anything. I think we do need another motor at least in one car to help contribute to pulling / pushing this train along. So what I've done, I've moved the 5 cars we were testing, the 2 coal cars, the caboose, and the 2 tank cars. Those are all off to the side. We now have the sleigh car and the Christmas tree car attached to the locomotive. So goal here, obviously the train should move much faster and smoother as it's going around the track here, and looking for any issues with the 2 train cars that are attached here. Want to make sure they're functioning well, moving along nice and smoothly. And if so, then we're in a pretty good spot for those. So let's fire this up. Definitely looks pretty smooth. Pretty happy, I think, with how that is performing. These train cars are awesome. Super happy that, Brick Tracks started this, sort of collection or theme, and that they're continuing to add to it. So I think the 2 goals for the 3 goals for the locomotive, obviously we want to fix the coupling situation there. Then we want to look for some additional motor cars, power cars that we can add to the train to help it pull as many cars as possible. And actually, I think those are the 2 main things. I'm not too worried about any of these train cars. I don't think they need additional tweaks, but we should run a test here with the Reindeer stock car. That is likely the one that will probably most likely out of the box need some improvements. just to make sure that the wheels are moving nice and smoothly and not providing any issues or resistance to the locomotive and how it's pulling the train cars around. Okay, so next up we have the Reindeer stock car. So we've added that in to be pulled by the locomotive, and I've pulled the other cars off, so it'll only be the stock car. And this is because I already have a feeling that there's going to be some issues with the stock car, specifically around the wheels that I'm going to need to do some tweaking on. So let's just test it by itself here. It's holding its own. That's not too bad. I think the benefit that the train has in general down here on the lower level Winter Village loop is that it's not dealing with a lot of surface height changes. There's some subtle ones in a few spots across the tabletop layout. Generally doesn't cause any issue, but periodically you run into a locomotive or a train car that seems particularly sensitive to that. So, nice and smooth down here, really good test case for it. And as we start to get some of these issues sorted out, and as we get the rest of the track in place on the mainline part of the lower level layout, we will look at putting this train and its train cars through a bit more rigor around the layouts, both here on the lower level and the tabletop level. I think we've got some pretty clear things to fix and improve here. Can't wait to get those two new tank cars, the Peppermint Mocha and the Caramel tank cars that Brick Tracks is releasing for their, the 2025 additions to the North Pole Railroad. I think those should be a lot of fun to build. And, we've got a lot of cool stuff ahead, not only with the train here, but also the Winter Village layout in general. Now that we've got this track in place, really want to start getting some buildings into the middle there with some lighting. And, obviously we're going to finish the connections up between this loop here and the T-junction that heads into the mainline part of the layout. So if you have not subscribed to the channel, please make sure to do so that you don't miss out on any of those upcoming videos. And thank you guys for watching. Really happy to see the Winter Village, North Pole Railroad locomotive and train cars moving around the layout again. I think this is an awesome milestone. And, I think as we get some of these little issues tidied up, we're going to unlock some really cool potential and awesome trains and related buildings over here on the Winter Village layout. Well, I think that is it. So thank you very much for watching, and we will see you again soon. Take care. Bye.